arid landscape stretching across deserts, rugged mountains, and fertile oases. It was a land where communities were built upon ancient customs, where the social fabric was woven tightly around tribal affiliations and family ties. But it was also a land of diversity, with bustling trade routes bringing people from far-flung regions, Africa, the Byzantine Empire, Persia, and beyond, all gathering in Arabia's trading hubs like Mecca and Yathrib, later Medina. They brought with them different languages, beliefs, and goods, creating a rich cultural crossroads. In this chapter, we'll delve into the Arabia of pre-Islamic times, exploring the tribes, religions, and social systems that set the stage for the emergence of a transformative faith. This landscape, though stark, had its own bustling centers of life, and Mecca was one of its beating hearts. Known for its Kaaba, a revered shrine believed to house ancient idols of various tribal gods, Mecca was a center of pilgrimage even before Islam. Pilgrims from tribes across Arabia would gather, honoring their own gods and creating bonds through shared customs, transactions, and festivities. Despite this unity in ritual, pre-Islamic Arabian society was largely tribal and competitive. Each tribe had its own gods, rules, and systems of justice, often leading to rivalries. Blood feuds were common, and the idea of justice revolved around loyalty to one's tribe above all else. Social hierarchy was also rigid, with distinct roles for nobles, merchants, slaves, and artisans. Women's roles were defined within the tribe, often subject to the authority of their male relatives. However, in some ways, tribal customs also offered security and a sense of identity in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. Religiously, pre-Islamic Arabia was a mosaic of beliefs. Polytheism dominated, but monotheistic ideas were not unheard of. Some people followed Hanifism, a native monotheistic belief in a single god, while Christianity and Judaism also had a foothold in the peninsula, especially in the north and in Yemen. Some tribes, seeking solace in the chaotic world around them, gravitated toward these monotheistic beliefs, drawn by their emphasis on morality and a single divine authority. In Mecca, however, the Kaaba remained the primary religious symbol, and its custodians, the Quraysh tribe, held significant influence. The Quraysh were both respected and feared, as they controlled not only the Kaaba but also the trade routes that passed through Mecca. They were merchants, wealthy and powerful, and they protected their interests fiercely. It was in this complex, tightly woven world, full of competing beliefs, family loyalty, and socio-economic inequality, that a new spiritual force was about to emerge, a force that would challenge the very core of Arabian society. Picture a boy named Muhammad born into the Hashim clan of the Quraysh tribe around 570 CE in Mecca. Mecca was a thriving center for trade, but Muhammad's beginnings were humble. Orphaned at a young age, he was taken in by his grandfather and later by his uncle Abu Talib. His life wasn't one of wealth or power. He worked as a shepherd, watching over the flocks that wandered the desert landscape, far from the bustling trade caravans passing through Mecca. This solitary work in nature gave young Muhammad time to observe, to reflect, and to develop an understanding of life's hardships early on. Growing up, Muhammad became known for his honesty and integrity. His fair dealings and trustworthy nature earned him the nickname Al-Amin, meaning the trustworthy. It was a title that reflected his deeply rooted sense of justice and compassion, qualities that would come to define him. Even in a city where wealth and status were prized, Muhammad stood out for his character rather than material wealth. By his 20s, Muhammad was working as a caravan trader for a wealthy widow named Khadija. His reputation for honesty had reached her, and she trusted him to manage her trade, something rare and impressive in those times. His work took him beyond Mecca to lands such as Syria, where he encountered different cultures and religions, Christians, Jews, and other religious sections. These experiences broadened his understanding and planted in him a curiosity about life's greater purpose, even as he remained firmly attached to the simple life of the desert. Khadija was so impressed by Muhammad's character and conduct that she proposed marriage, an offer he accepted. Although she was 15 years older than him, their marriage was strong and loving, a partnership of mutual respect and deep affection. Together, they had several children, and Khadija became his greatest confidant, a source of unwavering support who believed in him more than anyone else. This love and partnership would later play a pivotal role when Muhammad began to experience the spiritual stirrings that would change his life and the lives of millions forever. Even as he built a life in Mecca, Muhammad felt a profound spiritual restlessness. The polytheism and idol worship that dominated Meccan society felt hollow to him, and the inequality, tribalism, and constant feuding troubled his heart. This was a society marked by materialism and social injustice, where the weak were often exploited by the powerful, and tribal loyalties determined justice rather than a sense of universal moral law. To find solace, Muhammad often retreated to the quiet, stark solitude of the desert. One place became particularly important to him, a cave on Mount Hira, just outside Mecca. There, he would spend hours, sometimes days, in meditation and reflection. He found peace in the silence, pondering the nature of life.
A long time ago, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the sun, the moon, and the earth. After creating these, he saw that his creation was incomplete. So he asked his angels to collect clay from the earth. The obedient angels collected clay, and Allah made a man-like figure with it. And the God named him Adam alayhi salam. But the figure didn't move for 40 long years. It just stood still there. When Iblis saw this figure, he was confused and scared. And after 40 long years, one day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala breathed his spirit into Adam alayhi salam. When the spirit reached the head of the figure, it sneezed. When the spirit reached his eyes, he saw all the amazing food lying around. Then the spirit reached his stomach, and Adam alayhi salam felt hungry. The Prophet had seen the fruits lying around, so before the spirit could even reach his legs, he jumped towards the fruits. Adam alayhi salam fell down as he couldn't move his legs. Then Allah asked all the angels, including Iblis, to prostrate before Adam alayhi salam as a sign of respect. One by one, all the angels prostrated before the Prophet, except Iblis. When the Prophet woke up, he was happy to see the woman. He then named her Hawa because she was made from something living. Both of them lived happily in paradise for a long time. Shaitan was still angry at the humans. Many years had passed by, so Shaitan knew that the Prophet must have forgotten the words of Allah. One day, he made a plan that would banish the Prophet and his wife from paradise. Shaitan came to the paradise and tricked the Prophet and his wife into eating the forbidden fruit. The Prophet and his wife unknowingly plucked the fruit and started eating it. But even before they could finish eating the fruit, they knew they had committed a grave sin. They were now filled with pain, sadness, and shame. After eating the fruit of forbidden knowledge, they realized they were naked, so they ran to cover themselves up in leaves. They were now really scared, as they knew Allah would punish them for their disobedience. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came to know about this, he got angry. He got angry, and the Prophet and his wife were thrown out of the paradise. The Prophet and his wife walked for a very long time, and they finally settled down near a river. The Prophet knew that the life on earth was going to be very difficult. He had to make a house for them to live. He had to work hard to feed his family. They now no longer had the pleasures they enjoyed in paradise. After a few years, Hawa gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. They named the boy Qabil. And later, Hawa gave birth to another twins, again a boy and a girl. This time they named the boy Habil. Both Habil and Qabil grew up. Qabil took to farming, working in the fields and growing crops. When Habil grew up, he became a shepherd and took care of the sheep. When Habil and Qabil grew up to become adults, the Prophet decided to get them married. Since there were no other females on earth, Prophet decided to get Qabil married to Habil's twin and Habil to Qabil's twin. Qabil's twin sister was beautiful, while Habil's sister was not that beautiful. Qabil was not happy with the arrangement, and he wanted to marry his own sister. There was an argument, and the Prophet decided to settle the issue by offering a sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was decided that the one whose sacrifice is accepted will marry Qabil's sister. Habil collected the best lamb from his flock and offered it as a sacrifice to Allah. But Qabil didn't want to offer the best fruits and vegetables as sacrifice. Instead, he chose the bad vegetables and grains for sacrifice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the sacrifice of Habil, but rejected the one made by Qabil. The Prophet was present when they made their sacrifices, and it was decided that Habil would marry Qabil's sister. But Qabil was not at all happy. He was so angry that he wanted to kill Habil. One day Habil was late coming home, and the Prophet sent Qabil to search for him. Qabil went searching for Habil, and he went to the fields looking for Habil. At last he found Habil walking towards home. Qabil was still angry with Habil. "Your offering was accepted, but mine was not." To which Habil replied, "Allah only accepts from those who fear him." Qabil was angry to hear this, and he picked up a stone to hit Habil. Habil saw this, and even though he was bigger and stronger than Qabil, he said, "Even if you stretch your hand to kill me, I will never stretch my hand to harm you, because I fear Allah." This comment further angered Qabil, and he struck him with the stone, instantly killing him. When Qabil realized that Habil was dead, he was terrified and didn't know what to do. He didn't want his father to know what he has done. So he started thinking about ways to hide his sin. Qabil wandered from place to place with the dead body of Habil, trying to hide it. That was when he saw two crows fighting with each other. During the fight, one crow killed the other, and the dead one fell down. The victorious crow then scratched and dug a hole in the ground. He buried the dead crow in the hole he had dug. Then he filled the hole with mud. This gave Qabil an idea. And like the crows, he dug a hole on the ground and buried his brother's body in it. This was the first burial of a man. Qabil was ashamed of what he had done. Shaitan had won over him, and he knew that he could no longer go back to his family. The Prophet knew what had happened, and he mourned the loss of his son. He had lost both his sons. One was dead, and the other was misled by Shaitan. He warned his other children about Shaitan and asked them to always obey the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After a long time, the Prophet had many more children. The Prophet had grown old and his children loved him very much. When Adam alayhi salam realized that his death was near, he appointed Seth as the successor to his family. Time of his death, the angels came to his house and stood beside him. When the Prophet realized that the angel of death has arrived, he smiled peacefully and passed away.
MashaAllah, that was such a wonderful story.
Alhamdulillah, I am glad you liked the story. Now, I shall ask you a few questions to see if you remember the story.
Of course. Yes, go on, ask me.
Now tell me the name of the first human God had created.
It was Adam alayhi salam.
That's great, dear. And tell me the name of his wife.
It was Hawa.
You've got that right. All right, now for the next question. Tell me why the Prophet was banned from the paradise.
They were banned because they ate the fruit of forbidden knowledge. That's why God threw them out of the paradise. Isn't that right, Baba?
That's correct, my dear. Now for the next question. Tell me the names of the Prophet's first sons.
It was Qabil and Habil.
MashaAllah, you are giving all the right answers, my son. Let me see if you can answer this one. What was the profession of Qabil?
He was a farmer.
That's correct. And now for the last question. Whom did the Prophet appoint as the successor to his family?
Oh, can you give me some clues, Baba?
All right, here are the clues. Was it Qabil, Habil or Seth?
Seth. It was Seth, Baba. Isn't that right?
Yes, dear. Alhamdulillah, you are such a bright boy. Now that's all for today. Insha'Allah, I will tell you another story tomorrow. Ma'a salama.
Good night, Baba.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Baba. I was waiting for you.
What were you doing, my son?
I was just doing my homework, Baba.
And have finished it yet?
Almost, Baba. Just one more line to write.
All right, finish your homework and inshallah I will tell you the story of another prophet tonight.
Story of another prophet? Thank you so much, Baba. Just give me a minute and I'll finish writing this quickly. I have finished my homework, Baba. Can you please tell me the story now?
MashaAllah, that was quick. So excited, huh? All right, tonight I am going to tell you the story of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam.
Who was he, Baba?
I'll tell you, my son. Now listen carefully. Bismillah. The story of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Prophet Nuh alayhi salam to earth 1,000 years after sending Prophet Adam alayhi salam. The population on earth had increased many folds by now. And by this time, the evil shaitan had played his dirty tricks with mankind, and people had started worshipping idols. It was during this time that Allah sent another prophet to earth, Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, to guide the people back. But it wasn't going to be an easy job for the prophet. Fear Allah and do what Allah says, shouted the Prophet to everyone. But the people didn't want to listen. They shook their heads and continued worshipping the idols. The Prophet was an excellent speaker, and he was very patient too. Don't you understand that it was Allah who created this whole world? Shouted the Prophet. It was Allah who created the sun, the moon, and the stars you see in the sky. He created the rivers, the mountains, the trees, and everything you see around. He did all this for you and you alone. Then why are you not showing him any respect? Why are you worshipping these idols? But the people turned their backs on him, saying, "Ha! Who are you to advise us? You're just another man. And we think that you're lying. Go away and leave us alone." But there were good Muslims on earth too. Most of them were weak and poor. They listened to the words of the Prophet and realized that they were committing a sin by worshipping the idols. Now, there were two different groups of people on earth. One who worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the others who continued idol worship. Nuh alayhi salam continued preaching to the people for many years. The idol worshippers soon became tired of the Prophet. "You've been preaching lies for long enough," they said. "We are going to stone you if you do not stop." But the Prophet ignored them and continued calling the people tirelessly. He preached to them during the day and the night. On many occasions, he was stoned by the idol worshippers while preaching to the crowd. He was even beaten with the sticks. "You are no different from us," shouted the idol worshippers. "You are no prophet. You are just another man. And why should we listen to you? I am telling you the truth." The Prophet pleaded to them, "You are committing a sin by worshipping the idols." But the people didn't listen and they beat him again. "I fear for you. Allah is going to punish you one day," the Prophet shouted to them. But the people had no shame and they said, "He is a fool. Don't listen to him." All this pain did not let the Prophet to stop calling out to the people. He continued preaching to them for 950 years. The disbelievers kept making fun of the Prophet, and by now they had taken things too far. Nuh alayhi salam was disappointed by now, whereas the number of disbelievers kept growing and growing. One night, when the Prophet was offering his prayers, Allah spoke to him. "Don't be sad, Nuh," God said to the Prophet. "You have done what you were asked to. I am going to punish all the people on earth for their wrongdoings. Everyone on earth is going to die, except the Muslims and the animals," said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the first step, God then asked the Prophet to plant many trees. Nuh alayhi salam didn't understand the reason behind this, but he listened to Allah and started planting trees as he was told. He also asked the good Muslims who listened to him to do the same. They did this for more than 100 years. After many years, Allah spoke to the Prophet again. This time, he asked the Prophet to start building a ship. "It has to be a huge ship that can accommodate a pair of every animal on this earth," said Allah. The Prophet was confused. He didn't know how to build a ship, and no one had ever made a ship before. In spite of this, the Prophet started making the ship with the help of the Malaks. First, they made plans for building the ship. No one knows the exact size of the ship. Some say it had a length of 600 feet, and others say it had a length of 2,400 feet. Whatever it was, the ship was sure going to be a gigantic one. "We will help you to build the ship," said his children and the Muslims, and they joined the Prophet. First, the Prophet had to choose a place for building the ship. He chose the mountains far, far away from the city. The Prophet collected the tools and set out to build the ship. They started cutting down the trees for wood. Yes, it was the same trees he had planted more than 100 years back. Then they started building the ship as per the plan. The men worked very hard, day and night, to build the ship. When the disbelievers saw the Prophet building a ship on the top of a mountain, They started making fun of him. You are such an old fool, they said. Why would you possibly need a ship so huge? The others said, and how are you going to take it to the sea? You would come to know very soon, replied the Prophet. The people didn't know why the Prophet was building the ship, and they thought the Prophet had lost his mind. The Prophet and his men kept working hard. After many months, the ship was finally ready. They then thanked Allah for helping them to finish the ship. The time for the flood was nearing day by day. One night, Allah told the Prophet that he will start flooding the earth the day when the Prophet sees water coming out of the stove in his house. You see, this huge ship built by the Prophet had 3 different sections.
What were the different sections for, Baba?
They were for 3 different types of animals, Amir. The first one was for birds. The second part of the structure was for humans. And the third part was for the animals.
MashaAllah. That was brilliant.
Yes, my son. And while the day of the flood got nearer, animals and the birds started arriving one by one. They were arriving in pairs, one male and a female. There were elephants, giraffes, lions, rabbits, parrots. And soon the ship was filled with all the variety of animals and birds from the earth. And one day, like God had told the Prophet, water suddenly started coming out of his stove in his kitchen. This was the sign Nuh alayhi salam was waiting for. He knew that the time of the flood had arrived. When he went out, he saw that it had started raining too. Without wasting any time, he ran out and called all the good Muslims who had helped him to build the ship. He asked all of them to board the ship immediately. The disbelievers didn't understand what was going on. So they kept laughing at the Prophet. Look at the old fool, they said. What is he going to do with all those animals and men? The Prophet ignored them and asked his wives and sons to board the ship quickly. Everyone obeyed him, except for one of his wife and her son, who were not his followers. I will save myself from the water, his son said. Don't worry about me. The water levels had gone up by now, so the Prophet ran to board the ship. A terrible flood broke out, and the water levels began to rise rapidly. The earth's crust moved, and ocean floors started rising, which caused it to flood the dry lands. The rains didn't stop for hours either. By now, people realized that what the Prophet told them was true, and they ran towards the mountains to save themselves. The Prophet saw that his wife and son were climbing a mountain to escape from the water. So he shouted to them, "Come and board the ship! Save yourself!" But they ignored him and climbed to the top of the mountain. Then a huge wave, bigger than the mountain they stood on, came and hit them, killing both of them. These enormous waves killed all other disbelievers as well. The water kept rising and rising, and after some time, the earth was completely filled with water. Then Nuh alayhi salam said, Bismillah. When the Prophet uttered these words, the ship started moving. The rains had stopped by now, but the entire earth was filled with water. The Prophet knew that he had to keep sailing for a long, long time.
But didn't the animals hurt each other? Then how did they live together?
The ship had 80 people in it, and the Prophet had taken precautions to store enough food for the men and the animals. Allah had it all planned, my son. He made the ship suitable for the silent sheep as well as the violent lion. all the violent animals were down with some or the other sickness. All of them were living together. But the Prophet faced a lot of trouble because of the rats. They were everywhere, running up and down, nibbling there, nibbling here. They were really the troublemakers. And then Prophet prayed to the God, and it was then Allah created the cats. The cats hunted down the rats, and after some time, the rats started behaving as well. Like that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala solved many problems that the Prophet had to face during the journey. They had sailed for about 150 days by now. And they couldn't find land anywhere they could see. The Prophet and the men waited and waited for many days. The Prophet then decided to send a crow to see if it could find land anywhere, but the crow didn't return at all. Then the Prophet sent a dove in search of land. The dove flew away, and after a few days, returned with a branch of olive tree in its beaks. The Prophet and his family were really happy, as they knew that they were close to the land. The ship sailed further for some time and finally reached on the top of the Judi mountain. The Prophet said, Bismillah, and the ship stopped moving. After traveling for more than 150 days, their journey had finally come to an end. The Prophet released all the animals, birds and insects first into the land. They went out and populated the earth back again. The Prophet and other Muslims came out of the ship, and the first thing he did was to put his forehead to the ground in prostration. And that was a new beginning for the human race.
That was such a great story, Baba.
MashaAllah, I am glad you liked it, my son. Now shall I ask you a few questions from the story?
Yes, Baba.
All right, now tell me, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send Prophet Nuh alayhi salam to the earth?
He sent the Prophet to call people back to Allah.
That's correct, my son. Now for the next question. Why did the people not listen to the words of the Prophet?
The people on earth thought that the Prophet were lying to them. They thought the Prophet was just another man.
Very good, Amr. Can you tell me who boarded the ship along with the Prophet's family?
I know the answer. The Muslims boarded the ship too. The animals, birds, and the insects boarded the ship as well.
That's correct again. And now for the final question. Tell me the name of the